I do think if you follow your passion, you're going to give your best and people will see you at your best.
Welcome to Identity Unveiled. IU is a platform that supports advancement of Asian American women to the executive ranks. We highlight amazing stories of Asian American women becoming the first in their industry or breaking barriers as executives and leaders. Despite Asian American women comprising about 7% of the US population, they hold less than 1% of corporate board seats and represent only 2.4% of executive roles in Fortune 500 companies. The leadership of Asian American women is crucial. We need to amplify the voices of these that are often unheard.
Today, we're speaking with the powerhouse Tracey Doi. She is former CFO, Chief Financial Officer, and Group Vice President at Toyota North America, where she played a pivotal role in steering the company through significant growth in transportation during her tenure there. Well, since Toyota, she's hit refresh, or certainly not retirement, because she continues to serve on a portfolio of corporate boards and nonprofits. She currently serves on the board of 2 S&P 500 organizations, Quest Diagnostics and Pentair. She's an independent board trustee for SunAmerica SunTrust and Season Siri Trust, which are registered investment companies. And then off the corporate clock, she's deeply committed to being a passionate advocate for supporting women leaders and people of color, serving on boards of 50/50 Women of Boards, the National ACE Foundation, and the International Women's Forum in Dallas, to name a few. Welcome, Tracey.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that warm welcome. Happy to be with both of you.
Tell us about your upbringing and where you grew up.
So I grew up in Torrance, California. We are a close-knit family. I'm Japanese American. I'm 3rd generation on my dad's side, 4th generation on my mom's. And for those of you that may not be as familiar with the Japanese American experience, my parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles were part of the 120,000 Japanese Americans that were interned during World War II. They were incarcerated. So it was really an environment where family depended on one another. The Japanese American community depended on one each other. And education, like so many Asian families, was super important. Maybe I'll just share a little bit about my mom's side of the family, because that might give a little bit of background. My grandfather and his father had a successful import-export business in LA. But when World War II broke out, they recognized that they could be at risk. So they moved the family to Central California to a distant relative's farm, hoping that they wouldn't have to be interned. The government changed their policy and swept up everybody in California. They were moved to a really desolate area in Gila River, Arizona, and they lost their business, their home, and the whole family was grouped together in one barrack. Later, after the war ended, my mom was 8, so she came out when she was 11, and the family was moved to, again, the farm in Central California. They were actually fortunate to have a place to reside, and they worked as farm workers, packing peaches and starting all over, because, as she likes to say, they were city folks, so they were not familiar with farm life. My grandfather eventually saved up enough to move the family to Gardena, California, and being an entrepreneur, he started a chicken farm. It was an egg farm. They raised chickens, I think because the cost of entry was low, so they could buy little chicks, raise them, and sell eggs to the neighbors. And the whole family worked on the farm. All 4 children ended up going to UCLA. My mom was an educator, a school teacher, and really set a warm family environment for all of us, for my sister and I. And the neighbors, all of our cousins were in the same neighborhood. So we went to school together, went to Japanese school together on Saturdays, and really supported one another to try to help further the family after such a tragic time during World War II.
So as a mother who's an educator, I imagine education was a strong value that existed in your household.
That's for sure. I think that the reflection my grandfather would share with us is no one can take your education away from you. You will always hold that, regardless if belongings are taken away from you. So we were fortunate because my parents lived down the street from us. As the kids were growing up, we have 2 children, and it was like having a private tutor as I was working, because she would help them with their schoolwork. And I would tease them when the report cards came out. I'm like, looks like all of you got A's, because she would help with the proofing. But as we were growing up, certainly it was important to be diligent, and there was no question that you would continue on to college.
It actually took me by surprise growing up that college was even an option. Because it was like, no, you went to college, there was no other option, which I think was probably very formative as always kind of working towards attaining more and more towards your success as part of our stories as leaders.
Well, I would guess that this would not be a surprise to you that my dad would knock on our door on Saturday morning, and you're thinking you want to sleep in. And I would be getting ready for Japanese school, but he would say, while you're sleeping, someone is working. So get going. And that's just how you really recognize that you need to always do your best.
So then you went on, if we fast forward a bit to when you became the CFO and Group Vice President of Toyota North America, starting in 2003. What led you to pursue a career at Toyota?
I went to UCLA as a business econ major and really wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. Thought the training in public accounting would be good. My dad really wanted me to be a chemical engineer. That was his career, and he thought that there weren't women, especially Asian women, in that field. And while I might have liked math and science, I really thought I wanted to be much more involved with business. So I started in public accounting. I actually did a couple different stints, short stints in healthcare, entertainment. Then I spent 7 years in footwear, apparel, distribution. Then I was with AT&T Wireless for 4 years before I ended up at Toyota.
I think we hear from women leaders that, women executives in particular, that, it's a kind of combination of luck in their careers that help them get to where they are today. But I think there's also some strategy involved. When you think about your trajectory, what do you think really made you stand out to best be seen as having that executive potential?
Well, maybe I could share how I got to Toyota, and that might help a bit. I was volunteering for the March of Dimes. A friend had called me and asked if I would join the local LA board right after we had our son. And Fred Clayton is a dear friend, and Betsy Brooker-Mercader, and they own a recruiting firm, Executive Search. And I actually had initially turned it down because I said, I just had a baby. And he said, but think about it. Aren't you blessed that Kevin is healthy? I'm like, yes. Okay, I want to give back. So as a volunteer, I think you learn to lead in a safe environment. And so, of course, they asked me to be treasurer. So I was helping with the books. That's an easy way to give back, to be able to apply your expertise. But then I started to fundraise and move into areas where I was less familiar. And you're building people to follow around a purpose. And I think that's transferable from volunteer work to the corporate world. Later, Fred Clayton and Betsy called me back and said, we've got this opportunity at Toyota. We've seen you in action as a volunteer. We think your experience might align with what they're looking for. And when I looked at the profile, it was really something where I felt like it would be a good fit. So sometimes being visible could be in a different environment, could be within the community, could be volunteering at a school, and that might give you that opportunity to look at something new from a corporate perspective.
Tracey, I think there's certain parts of your story that someone's going to resonate with. And someone's going to maybe even be saying, I'm doing that. I'm doing this. I'm doing what she's saying, and I'm still not getting to the top, not being seen. There's only one Tracey Doi. I mean, what made you stand apart?
Well, it's having experience, but it's also having a bit of luck. My timing was very fortunate that when I joined Toyota 3 years in, that my boss retired and that they were willing to take a chance, because I would tell you I wasn't ready. I didn't think I was ready, but I was willing to grow into the role. And so that's probably what I would say, is that if you are willing to take tough assignments and put yourself out there, that could make a difference.
What's interesting about your story is it's almost like you followed your passion towards what you wanted to do off the corporate clock. And that really became an opportunity, a network that allowed you to get into a position with Toyota.
It did. I tell Fred and Betsy, I'm blessed that my whole life has come together because of that. And I do think if you follow your passion, you're going to give your best and people will see you at your best. I mean, I don't volunteer for the end game. It's really trying to help whatever the particular cause is. But I would say that it certainly opened doors.
It's always difficult, the path that you took to balance personal and profession and to climb as high as you did. What is a mindset that you had when you were on your path, executive leadership path, to integrate the flow of life and work?
Well, I think there's different stages of life, right? Of when you have more time versus others. So when I talk about volunteering for March Dimes, I would take the kids. They'd be in strollers and we'd go on the walk together. As a family, we've contributed to the Asian community through giving circles where we could volunteer together. I think sometimes you can weave it in. Toyota is such a great company that gives back to the community and makes it very easy to volunteer. So I could give back within the company through the employee resource groups or activities that the company was sponsoring, as well as they would support my activities outside. But I certainly had more time to volunteer after the kids were semi-launched, when they had started college. As earlier, we would do more as a family.
What do you think was your secret?
So there were stepping stones, and it's a matrix, right? I started off as the controller for the sales and marketing part of Toyota in just the US. Then the job evolved to the CFO, and I took on more responsibility besides the finance area, administration, procurement, real estate. And then we merged manufacturing with sales. And my really dear friend, Chuck Brown, was the CFO for manufacturing. And we worked side by side together. And then he eventually retired, and then they combined the job. And then I had all of North America.
Did you ever feel that the upbringing that you had being a Japanese American woman, that it was almost at odds with what was required of you as an executive?
Well, I think that you have to find your own stride and your own style. And that took a little bit, because think about it, the role of a CFO is usually about matching up resources to achieve the vision and the purpose of the organization. And matching resources typically is funding, as well as people, capital, IT, and pulling those resources together to be able to expand a plant, launch a new product, go into electrification. So you have to be able to say no a lot. You could say yes to great ideas, but you do have to many times say, not right now. Great idea, love to be able to support, but not right now. Because for the greater good, we've got to consolidate resources around these top 3 items. So what's at odds is anything that's confrontational. I always hate confrontation. So I think it's a matter of figuring out what's the best way to approach it that's comfortable for oneself. A great friend and mentor, Barbara Cooper, is 6'2", blonde, just has a very charismatic way when she walks into the room. And she says, you've got to really find your stride to be able to have that gravitas to be able to command the room. And I realized my approach wasn't going to be the same as hers. I was never going to be 6'2". I'm 5'4". And maybe it's better for me to take a conversation face to face, sitting down. Maybe it's better for me to take a difficult conversation in smaller groups, one-on-one, gain consensus, and then bring it together at the big meeting. So I think it's a matter of finding the approach that works for you.
Is there an approach that's wrong?
No, it may be just an approach that is uncomfortable. I'm not going to be a pound the table screamer and yeller, but I think you have to find the culture that works for you. I was really fortunate to be in a culture that I really loved. Toyota was much more. And I've sought that out in the companies that I serve on the boards to find that culture that is a good fit.
What type of culture was a good fit for you?
One where your voice is heard, one where you feel like you're able to contribute to the conversation. Your ideas may not be the ones that are most accepted, meaning that maybe after everybody's had their discussion, then the approach might be based upon what the majority really view or whatever is appropriate at the time. But at least you feel like your contribution is respected and appreciated.
You know, there are a lot of, I would say, interesting or even ridiculous things we hear from other women. We're not always sure where they come from, right? They may see us as competitors. They may see us out of insecurity. These comments, we hear so many colorful ones. Some of the comments I've heard, never wear the color pink. Your LinkedIn profile, you need to look a bit scary. You should not smile. All sorts of interesting comments, and we don't know where they come from. I would love to hear anything that you heard along the way
I haven't heard that one about pink. I like bright colors, so I have a tendency, and it was actually kind of a joke because as during the 20 years I was at Toyota, initially there weren't that many executive women, and we honestly could fit around a dining table. And then the numbers have grown significantly, which I'm really proud of and pleased of. But 3 times a week we have executive coffee, and it's a standing meeting. You grab a cup of coffee, 15 minutes, there'd be announcements, recaps, sales reports, things like that. And it would be a sea of men, majority, in taupe or navy blazers. And so we made it a point to wear bright colors because we wanted to stand out and wanted to make sure that it was clear that there were women in the room. So I don't always go with that. I tend to wear bright colors. But I do think that there are times where you get questioned, can you be tough enough? I've been questioned that during the interview. Remember, somebody actually pinched my cheek. Oh, you look too cute. I don't know that you'd be able to do this job. And I'm like, I know I wouldn't want to do it at this company, that particular company that I was interviewing with.
How do you know what's feedback you should take to heart versus feedback that's like, well, you're saying that to me because I'm a woman, or you're saying that to me because I'm an Asian woman?
I think I really tried to look at what did I want to model? And so a typical question I get is, did you have a mentor? I had many mentors, and I was really appreciative of the support I've gotten along the way. Not many were Asian women. And so I think that one of the things to consider is that I heard this phrase later in my career. I didn't realize it later on, but something that I learned through our University of Toyota, which is a training organization within the company, is building out your personal board of directors. And looking, for me, that meant looking at individuals that I really admire and respect and wanted to emulate or learn from different aspects. There was not one person per se. So family values, my mother, great partner, my husband, my older sister was a great role model for me. And then in the workplace, it could be our head of government affairs is a really terrific presenter, and he's able to capture his audience. He uses wonderful visuals. And I look at that and I think, Stephen, how did you do that? But help me understand how I'm not just putting boring charts. So then I pull from that. From a presentation perspective, I think confidence is so key. And that's something that for the Asian culture, that eye contact, ability to be able to speak up, to be able to share your voice isn't always natural, right? We're always told to respect our elders, sit back, observe, and then contribute when you're asked. Well, that doesn't work if you really have something you've got to be able to say. So you have to figure out what's the easiest way to approach to get your idea across.
You sit on the board of two S&P 500 corporate boards. What does it take for them to see us? Like, they saw you. Is there something more that we need to be doing to be more visible?
When you think about search for a board candidate, the profile that is written is based upon what skills are they looking for and experience. So in my case, they were looking for a qualified financial expert from a large company that has scale and complexity that's similar to the organizations that they are leading. And so they're not going to start off by saying, we're looking for an Asian woman. They're going to start off with, what are the key skills and experience that are required? And so what can we do? We can make sure that those that have that experience are visible and on the tickler list of potential candidates. And that could be through profiles that you're doing. It could be based upon organizations that are making sure. There was recently a list of the top 30 Asian board directors. That hadn't happened before. There are studies now being offered that Ascend Pinnacle is part of to be able to profile how low the percentage of Asians are on corporate boards. And so we are definitely welcoming of our sisters and brothers that are Black, that are Latinx and other genders, but we want to be sure that we are considered as well part of the underrepresented and could be considered if an opportunity opens the door.
Your work is so crucial for men, women, AAPI, and like you said, really diverse backgrounds. Tracey, I love how you, at a broader scale, want to make an impact for AAPI or AAPI women for the corporate boardroom. We talk the same language and that we're in sync. But what is it that you wish you knew about corporate boards? What type of insight can you help accelerate the advancement of AAPI women if you were to speak to them today?
In order to be considered for a corporate board, you have to be able to have the experience that would be helpful to the company to grow and prosper. So the reason why I really try to invest in women that are coming up through the ranks is because we need to see more women, Asian women, in the C-suite first. And then they're going to be considered, if they are working for a large public company, for a corporate board. So I didn't set out 10 years ago and say, my next aspiration is going to be a corporate board. Kind of fell into it from nonprofit work, being on the Federal Reserve Advisory Council, then getting asked to serve on a small startup and then onto a bank. So I wish maybe earlier on I had learned more about what would it take if that's what I aspired to do. And that's why I volunteer for 50/50 Women on Boards, as well as Ascend Pinnacle, which is focused on really developing aspiring AAPI men and women to the corporate boardroom. So when we talk about trying to grow Asian American women of leaders at all levels, there's a lot of ways that we can all do that. And so it could be reaching in within your own organization through employee resource groups, but it also could be out in the community. And I'll give you an example. We have a powerhouse group of 100 Asian American women that volunteer together called the Orchid Giving Circle. We're based in Dallas, and we give of our time and talents to be able to fundraise for causes that we believe in that will support the Asian community in North Texas. Our largest fundraiser is the Power Leadership Forum. And what we try to do is have panels and speakers and mentoring sessions and coaching sessions for Asian women that are probably 5 to 15 years into their career. And the thought is, if they could see women that look like themselves that maybe are just further along in their career trajectory, and that could help inspire them and give them guidance so that they don't stumble the way that I stumbled or others have, maybe that will help us fill in the corporate ranks and then eventually the corporate boardroom.
What were the stumbles you had?
Oh my goodness, many. Maybe not appreciating that culture makes a huge difference at the company that you select. The values need to align. My values need to align with the leadership of the organization. Otherwise, you're following a North Star that doesn't make any sense to you. Probably taking things too personally initially. If my project didn't get approved, I'd be all upset. And later I realized, it just wasn't the top of the priority list, but it mattered so much to me. Learning how to lead versus manage stumbles along that way. Doesn't mean doing everything the exact same way that you would. It's really about unleashing the talent within your team and giving them the opportunity to grow. That's so important. Lots of mistakes along the way, but that's how we learn. And you hope that you reflect and figure out a better way going forward.
Is there something specific for AAPI leaders that is kind of a pattern of development to help with growth? I mean, is it about the individual and growing them, or is it about changing the perceptions of the people that are making the decisions to get us into the door?
Well, I think visibility is important, because to be considered, you need to be in the flow. And sometimes if the network of the NomGov Nominating and Governance Committee and their chair is who they know and their circle, and unless they're brought diverse candidates, including AAPI candidates, to the table, they may not know. So I don't know that there's this, I have not perceived it as are not interested in Asians. I think it just may not be that there is visibility and understanding of the capacity and talents available. And I'm getting that question more. So I think it's important that those that are in the ability to influence that slate of candidates have ready qualified candidates to be able to hand over to say, have you thought of and have you considered, I know somebody that would be helpful to you.
Tracey, you took the words out of my mouth. That is exactly what we're honing in on. And we see the opportunity and the dire need in the market is to provide C-suite women or senior executives that are highly qualified and vetted and get them to these jobs and boards so that more can fill them.
Well, what you're doing with Identity Unveiled is so helpful, right? You're profiling qualified individuals that should be considered and sought after. And The other part I think that is changing is that corporate boards are not looking only at CEOs anymore. There used to be this bias that you needed to be a CEO of a public company to be able to contribute. And an opportunity that is unveiling itself right now is that with new required skills, whether that be social media marketing or technology or cybersecurity, that gives opportunity for more Asians to be able to step forward at a younger age in their career as well.
I'm curious, how did you get your first board?
I think that the Federal Reserve Economic Council helped because I was on the City National Bank board, and probably the references that they got from that experience helped. So I do recommend, besides nonprofit work, that advisory councils, industry organizations help highlight your expertise that is transferable to a corporate board, because recommendations really make a difference.
I want to know personally, I'm Korean and I know these answers myself, but I'm so curious to learn about you, Tracey. How did the Japanese culture personally attribute to your leadership as an executive?
Well, it's interesting because through my experience at Toyota, I actually learned more about my Japanese culture. And so the two main tenets for Toyota are respect for people and continuous improvement. And when you think about respect for people, it really does tie well with the roots that I grew up with. Always honoring your family, your elders, taking care of others, making sure you're there for one another. And so that could be respect for shareholders, suppliers, team members, your business partners. All of that really resonates with me. It's also the continuous improvement, that do your best, no matter what. I mean, you've heard that an A- or a B+ is an F. No, we always do our best. And I don't know that I grew up with that type of pressure. It was probably self-ingrained, but you always knew that my parents or grandparents sacrificed a lot for being able to go to school and to be able to have the opportunities that I had. So we wanted to be sure that we didn't disappoint. And I think that correlates well with the corporate business, because you want to always achieve and do the best that you can.
Thank you, Tracey. It's been very insightful, excellent perspectives that I think really are going to change the conversation and help to bring more visibility to AAPI women at the executive ranks. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. It was wonderful to be with both of you.